Hello, beautiful souls. Before we dive in, let's take a moment to ground and center together. Take a deep breath in through the nose and a slow breath out the mouth. Soften your shoulders. Let your feet connect to the ground beneath you. You are here. You are present. You are exactly where you need to be. Affirm with me. I am present. I am grounded. I am a holistic healer. I am doing transformational work. I am worthy of healing and expansion. I am open to all God has for me. I honor the human behind the healer. Welcome to the Holistic Therapist Podcast, your safe space to decolonize, integrate, heal, and expand beyond the box of what it means to be a therapist and healer. I'm your host, LeNaya Smith Crawford, licensed holistic therapist, trauma-informed facilitator, yoga and breathwork teacher, sound healer, and entrepreneur. Let's get into it. Hello, beautiful souls, and welcome back to another episode of the Holistic Therapist Podcast. I am so excited for today's guest. Dr. Shena is absolutely amazing, and I'm really excited for this conversation. And so a little bit about Dr. Shena. She is a licensed embodiment-focused psychologist, healer, trauma-informed yoga teacher, energy healer, and a Ashun priestess based in Los Angeles, California. As the founder of Embodied Truth Healing and Psychological Services, she holds space internationally for BIPOC individuals, couples, groups, and organizations committed to calling themselves back into their bodies as a freedom practice. Her approach divests from the westernized blueprint of healing and draws on African spiritual traditions, indigenous wisdom, land-based approaches, and ancient healing practices to offer whole person care for the mind, body, heart, and spirit. She is also the author of Body Rights, a holistic healing and embodiment workbook for Black survivors of sexual trauma. And this conversation is truly beautiful. We talk about decolonizing the way that we work, embodiment, ancient healing practices. And Dr. Shena is also a featured speaker at this year's Holistic Therapist Conference. And so if you want to hear more about embodiment and integrating trauma-informed yoga into your work as a therapist or healer, you want to join us October 1st through 4th at the beautiful Art of Living Retreat Center. And so without further ado, let's get into today's episode. Hello, hello, hello. I am so excited for this conversation. I am so honored that Dr. Shena would be the first guest on the Holistic Therapist Podcast. And so the work that you do is truly amazing. It changes lives, and I'm really excited to talk about all the things. And so I know that embodiment is at the foundation or really central to your work. And so I would love for you to define what is embodiment and what does that mean?
Firstly, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here with you and to be your first guest. So what an honor. Embodiment is one of my favorite things to talk about. Wrote a whole book about rediscovering embodiment as a survivor of sexual trauma. And so I'd love to just pull from this little poem that I wrote in my book, Body Rights. It says, embodiment is a birthright. It is to come into this world spirited and present with ourselves, It is to practice presence in the body. It is to be in the body, to know it, to sense it, and to believe it. And it sounds so pretty. We might have to pause for me to clear. That happens sometimes when I'm speaking. It sounds so pretty, and it is not as easy as it might seem, especially for folks that are living in bodies with targets on them, or folks who live in bodies that are also crime scenes. And that can happen whether it's connected to this lifetime or previous lifetimes.
Yeah.
And so whenever I talk about embodiment, I also like to name what disembodiment is.
Yeah.
I find that that is maybe the more common place, right?
Mhm.
Which is why this work that we do is so important. I find it completely rational and logical to want to live, or just in survival to live outside ourselves, beside ourselves. And so disembodiment is to not be present in our bodies. We aren't able to experience the full range of emotions and sensations that we have access to as humans. We may not believe our bodies or be in touch enough to follow signals, intuition, and all
Yeah.
of that. So it's urgent. It's a call and response, a ritual, and a beautiful way to be.
Yeah, no, I love that. And I love that you talked about disembodiment because
Mhm.
I agree. I think most of our communities, especially marginalized communities, that's the space that we're living in. And so if someone has the awareness that they are disembodied, that they're not present, that they're not able to make the connection, find safety, and all the things, where do they start on this journey of embodiment?
Yeah, that acknowledgement is a beautiful start, right? I think that's the way that many people come into this work. Something happens and they're like, why didn't I feel that? I bumped my knee. I don't remember when that happened, but I have this bruise on my leg,
Yeah.
right? Or they're out in public and they're feeling outside of themselves. So noticing those signs. For someone that's been living outside of themselves or disembodied for whatever reason, but especially with trauma being the story, it can be overwhelming to all of a sudden be experiencing sensations that are both pleasant and unpleasant, can be a lot. And so, one of the ways I suggest people begin the process of calling themselves back in is through movement.
Yeah.
And, that's part of my story too, that I practice what I preach. And so much of how I work is informed by my own healing journey. Movement is dance, movement is yoga, movement is a walk in the
Yeah.
evening, focusing on, right, your feet hitting the pavement, right? Or how you feel when the sun is warm on your face, right? These little moments of connection and feeling and spreading out inside
Yeah.
yourself.
I love that. And I love that you talk about how these practices don't have to be this big, robust thing. I think a lot of times people think the practices that get us to embodiment have to be 60 plus minutes or a daily, weekly retreat. But like you said, simple practices done consistently can really, really help. And giving different examples of movement. Now, me personally, yoga is,
Hey, we know you're biased.
I know you resonate.
Mhm.
For the folks out there understanding that movement can come in so many different forms. You talked about dance and qigong and going for a walk and all the things. But I really loved how you talked about that this work comes from your lived experience. You've got all the credentials, a doctor. So you've done your studies, you've done your work, but talk to us about your personal journey and how that really impacts this idea of embodiment for you.
So, little Shena, shout out to her, my greatest teacher and my sweetest beloved, I was a dancer as a little girl. My mom made a way for me to attend dance classes regularly at different points in my life. And I navigated quite a few things at home, growing up with a mother who was doing her best, but also took up a lot of the emotional space and a lot of the air in the room. There wasn't much space for me and my feelings. And so I would go to dance class feeling away,
Mm,
not necessarily even being able to name that feeling or that experience. And I would go to dance class and have a blast. And after dance class, I felt different. I never
mm,
wanted to leave, and I could recognize the before and after. And I grew up to understand later, right? Connect those dots later that I was alchemizing what was happening at home, right? And in a way that helps me to come back to my body, to be present in my body, to release the things that weren't helpful or accumulating, that there wasn't space being held for. And so I went to college as a theater and dance major at first. And that was a surprise to no one. And I found myself conflicted about what to major in. I wanted to be a dancer for a living. And also,
mm.
I had this natural way of holding people. I've been the secret keeper for my whole life.
Yeah.
And eventually, thinking I had to make a choice between dance and some sort of helping profession, it's interesting to have found myself here at this point where I feel like I can do it all. I can do
Yes.
both, and my work helps people to rediscover home and liberation in their bodies.
Yes, I love that. I love the connection between how you grew up and finding a practice that really worked for you to now full circle integrating both things into your work. And so, can you
Hmm.
speak to what that looks like? What is this integrative, holistic, embodied approach you take in the work that you do with your clients and your communities?
I was rebelling throughout grad school, and this is an interesting thing. I knew I needed to go to grad school in the timing where we were in the context and timeline. I felt like the stuff I say is wild, right? The way I think about healing is wild. And so, as a Black woman wanting to be taken seriously, I felt like I needed the credentials to back that up. Now, that conversation would be very different now, but that's a big piece of my story in terms of going to grad school. But I rebelled along the way, right? We didn't have the language of decolonizing at the time, but I found myself really pushing back and resisting some of the theoretical explanations that we're trained in these contexts. And I often found myself thinking, well, what about we? What's
Mm,
the body's experience? What's the heart and relationship experience? And what is the spirit connection? And
yeah.
so my approach is that body, heart, and spirit. Mind is what we typically think of, right? In the healing space. How do we think about the world? How does what we experience affect how we think about ourselves and the world? The body is what you and I are here speaking about: nervous system, physiology, disembodiment, and embodiment. Even our energy body goes back to previous lifetimes, as I mentioned before. And then the heart is about our relationship to self and others, and often themes of distrust or betrayal show up
Yeah.
here. And then lastly, spirit, which is where our intuition, our relationship to higher power, God, creator, source, ancestors, and even our sense of power lives. So when I'm holding space for people, for myself and others, I'm considering all of that, and we're exploring those things together to see where there is room for integration, room to expand, and room to live right from that whole self
Mhm.
way.
Yeah.
I will often say we live in a world that insists on seeing us broken so they
Mm,
can make money off of us, right? But we are already whole, mind,
yeah.
body, heart, and spirit. And some of us have just forgot and are
Yeah.
trying to remember.
Yes, I love the way you put that. It's really a remembering, right? And
Mhm.
so, even talking about this process of decolonizing the work, right? So, moving from linear, hierarchical, Eurocentric views, we're only going to think about the thoughts, but really expanding it and integrating, which I absolutely love and resonate and agree
Mhm.
with. This whole podcast is on needing that more holistic approach. And so, when you're taking this holistic approach with your clients and your community members, I do know that African spiritual traditions is something that your work is rooted in. What are
Mhm.
some of the practices that you integrate? Of course, we know yoga, but just tell us a little bit about what that looks like for you in your work.
So I am an Ifa priestess in the Isheshe tradition. I'm an Oshun priestess, and Oshun is the goddess that governs the river, fresh, cool waters. And she is the goddess of love, fertility, creativity, right? And so I love the Ifa tradition specifically because there are these deities who show us aspirational ways of living that also have a nature component. And while all of my clients don't practice Ifa or the same tradition that I practice, I find that connecting to our ancestral wisdoms and technologies, one of which is really common, relationship to the elements, or
Mm,
remembering ourselves as elemental beings, or remembering that our ancestors were elemental beings. They
mm,
moved, right? They danced. They had connections and sensitivity and intimate connections with the elements, the wind, the water, right? Fire, right?
mm,
And each of those elements can hold us in a certain way. So one example, two examples of how I might integrate African spiritual traditions is to consider ancestral reverence as a way of healing, as a portal for healing intergenerational trauma in particular, trauma healing that reaches both backwards and forward generations. And so we're wondering, what if we have stories, what were the ancestors up to? How might their ways of being harmful or complex have been survival skills during their timelines and contexts? How
yeah.
have those been passed down?
Mm,
And what can we do to alchemize it, right?
yeah.
Because we no longer have to survive. How can we use their strengths as a tool to pull forward for ourselves, a wisdom to embody in our way, right? As a source of support.
Yeah.
Another example is I talk a lot in metaphor and
Mm,
symbolism. And so sometimes I learned this tool a while back with some elders who I think it's called Indigenous Tools for Life. I want to quote that right. And sometimes things are just too much to hold. And so
mm,
one of the questions I'll invite my clients to answer is there an element of nature that can hold this for you? And
okay.
it's so interesting how quickly with that invitation, people are like, "Oh, ocean, the salted water, right?
Yeah.
I literally want to be held by the ocean. That feels like the only place that makes sense for me. Or I would really love for a wind to pass through and help me to move through this, help me to clear it out. It's so simple.
Mhm.
And at the same time, it's profound and it is embodied remembrance.
Yes, those practices are so beautiful, and those examples that you gave. And to me, as I'm hearing you talk, it's reminding me that like, right, everything is connected.
Yeah.
And if we also carry, right, the survival and the trauma of our ancestors, we can also carry the wisdom, which I think is
Mhm.
also part of the remembering, like you're saying.
Absolutely.
I'm curious because I know a lot of the audience may have, like myself, grown up in traditional religious backgrounds, Christianity, Catholicism, and all the things, right?
Mhm.
A question that gets asked a lot is, for instance, the practices that you're talking about that are connected to your work as a priestess,
Mhm.
can that work go alongside someone who is a Christian or a Catholic or a Muslim or identifies with a particular religion.
Yeah, I think so. And it also requires some open-mindedness and curiosity, right? We are not one-dimensional people, right?
Mm,
We are dynamic. And so we're our ancestors. And one of the tools, I usually ruffle feathers when I say this, but I stand by it. One of the tools that can be really helpful in allowing healing to be what it needs to be, creative, colorful, multidimensional, dynamic, that allows us to straddle the multiverse realms, right? Is to allow ourselves to question.
mhm.
We have been programmed.
Yeah.
And when we are programmed and our relationship with our intuition is suppressed, we're easier to control. And
Mhm.
when we allow ourselves to question and to be curious and have experiences for ourselves versus being told what to do, we can discover and decide what fits and what doesn't fit. Right. And so if I'm working with someone that doesn't have the same spiritual tradition that I have, usually I don't even need to name that. I can just ask someone, let's say they're a Christian, right? Is there a story in the Bible that you can remember where someone leaned on the support of nature,
Yeah.
where fire, where water, where wind,
Yes.
right? And cultivate the relationship that way, meeting people where they are. And also, we know that in some of the religions that are particularly prominent in our communities, there is this belief that ancestral reverence is demonic, right? We even have these sayings like, let the dead rest. I
Yes.
hate to break it to you, y'all. If you got a picture of your grandma somewhere in your house or an heirloom, their necklace or this blanket, that
Yeah.
is an altar. That is a shrine. In
It's
your
right.
home, it is
Yeah.
a reverence, right?
Yeah.
It is keeping their memory alive in your space. And that
Yeah.
is okay. I talk about this a lot in Body Rights as well in the fourth journey, ancestral reverence as healing, and help people ease into the questioning and the
Yeah.
curiosity so they can see again what fits and what doesn't.
Yes. I love that. Go get the book. Okay.
Hey,
And unlearn.
that
We
part.
could have a whole separate conversation about that, but we're going to hold it
Mhm.
for another time.
And will.
But I love that openness, the willingness to unlearn and create your own definition, right, of what your spiritual practice and what that looks like for you. So I absolutely love that. Grab the book. Where can the people find Embodied Rights?
So the book is called Body Rights, a holistic healing and embodiment workbook for Black survivors of sexual trauma. You can find it through my website, www.embodiedtruthhealing.com, or wherever you get books, right? Wherever books are sold.
Period. Before I let you go, there are three questions I always love to ask my guests. And so the first one is, what is your favorite tool for client transformation?
Yes. Favorite tool for client transformation is connecting with intuition. Your life depends on it because it does. So many of us have experienced ruptures in our intuition. We don't know what it sounds like, the voice sounds like, or where it lives in our bodies. So I help people to remember that, find it, and in that they remember how to trust themselves.
Love that. Intuition, so important, so powerful. What is feeling expansive right now in your life or business?
Yeah. In my life, I am just really in flow. I'm a figure it out person, which I know is connected to a need to control all the aspects of my life. And I'm just really enjoying flowing, not controlling, is what I've been saying to myself for the last year. And that has created such a beautiful opportunity for adventure, living in answered prayers,
Mm,
and at the same time, building the life that I want.
I love that. That's a beautiful reminder for me too. Getting
Yes.
and then finally, how are you honoring the human behind the healer?
Yeah, that's definitely connected. I feel the words that I've been using lately, I'm with me. And I feel that so much in my body, in my spirit, and the choices that I'm making in support of myself. I reconnected with my yoga practice. It is a practice, it falls off, it comes back, but coming back to it, I always remember why it is a love that will always be with me. And I am honoring that I need to be in bodies of water often.
Yeah.
And I am just really committed to what it means to be with me.
I love that.
Thank you for having me.
Yes. Thank you. All right. We'll see you soon.
Peace.
Thank you for being here, beautiful soul. The work you do changes lives. The healing you hold space for creates real change in this world. And I want to remind you that you are worthy of living well while helping your communities heal. You are worthy of the time it takes to nourish your mind, body, and soul, and you are worthy of expansion. If today's episode resonated, subscribe, leave a 5-star review, and share this with someone in your life who helps, heals, and leads. And if you're ready to go deeper, I want to personally invite you to join us at the 2nd annual Holistic Therapist Conference happening October 1st through 4th at the breathtaking Art of Living Retreat Center in Boone, North Carolina. Early bird doors are officially open, and this is the best price you will see for this experience. Trust me, you don't want to miss this. Grab your early bird ticket now. The link is in the show notes, and I will see you there, beautiful soul. Till next time, stay grounded, stay embodied, and keep honoring the human behind the healer. I'm sending you so much love, and I will see you next week.